This is breaking news from CBS 13.
Thank you for joining us on our CBS News Sacramento stream right now. We are waiting for some updates right now out of Butte County, where we've been following breaking news. We're standing by for an update from the sheriff after two young boys, we're talking kindergartners, ages 5 and 6 years old, were shot at a school. It happened this afternoon at the Feather River School of Seventh-day Adventists. Deputies found the suspected shooter with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. You can see where people have been standing hugged, saying prayers as parents were picking up their children at a nearby church. The two students were taken to local hospitals, the ones who were shot, though their conditions at this point still unclear. Because of this ongoing investigation and, of course, out of an abundance of safety, Highway 70 has been closed in both directions. And right now, we do want to get to that press conference right now as we're getting an update from the sheriff.
Okay, very good. So first off, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Corey Honey. I am the sheriff of Butte County, and I am here this evening to provide you with an update on the investigation of the shooting that occurred earlier this afternoon at a school here in Butte County. I want to begin by telling all of you that we're still very early in the investigation. The information that I am providing for you today is the best information that I have, but recognize that as we move forward in the investigation, the information I provide tonight may change. We may get clarification, and as we do that, we'll provide that information for you. But I'm going to tell you what we can tell you tonight, and then subject to revision going forward. So, at approximately 1:08 p.m. this afternoon, the California Highway Patrol began to receive 911 calls from a school located here in Butte County. That school is the Feather River School of the Seventh-day Adventists, which is located on Cox Lane and Highway 70 just outside of Oroville. The calls went to the California Highway Patrol because they were made from cell phones, and it's not uncommon for a 911 call placed from a cell phone, which is in close proximity to a highway, to be routed first to the California Highway Patrol. The dispatch of the California Highway Patrol were advised that there was an active shooter on the campus. They immediately transferred that call to the Butte County Sheriff's Office. Our dispatchers received that transfer at approximately 1:09 p.m. and immediately dispatched deputies. In addition to transferring the call to the Sheriff's Office, the California Highway Patrol also dispatched their officers. And the first officer on scene was a California Highway Patrol officer. That officer arrived on scene at 1:10 p.m., about 2 minutes after the original call came in. That officer immediately went on to campus. There he was directed to an area of the campus by staff and students and located an adult male. That subject was deceased and appears to have a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The Highway Patrol officer located a handgun near that individual's body and secured that firearm. Deputies from the Butte County Sheriff's Office arrived at approximately 1:14. From that point forward, the deputies who were on scene, as well as the CHP officers who were on scene, began to do two things simultaneously. One was to render medical aid to two students who had sustained gunshot wounds, and began to search the campus and classrooms to ensure that there were no other individuals who posed a threat to the students or the faculty. As I noted, there were two students who sustained gunshot wounds. Both boys, 1-5, 1-6, both attended the school and were in kindergarten. Those two children were transported to local hospitals. They are currently in extremely critical condition, and they're being treated by the medical staff. I'm thankful that they are still alive, but they have a long road ahead of them, and I would certainly hope that you would all keep them in your thoughts and prayers as we move forward. As I said, the deputies and CHP, once they searched the campus to determine if there was any other threats, once that was secure, they began to move the students who were in various locations through the campus into the school's gymnasium so that we could secure them there and protect them there. Eventually, once the scene was secure and we had enough personnel, a school bus was brought to the campus. The students, there were about 35 of them in total, were loaded onto the school bus, and those students were transported to the Nazarene Church here in Oroville, which is where we set up a reunification center so that those students could be reunified with their parents and family members. We had BCSO personnel present to assist with that reunification. But in addition to that, we had crisis counselors from the Butte County Behavioral Health Department. We had law enforcement chaplains. We had representatives from the Nazarene Church, all there in an effort to provide support to those children. In addition to that, we had advocates from our district attorney's office, and in a moment I will allow our district attorney, Mike Ramsey, to come up and give you a little bit of information about that, followed by Special Agent in Charge, Sid Patel, to tell you what the FBI's role is, which I'll highlight here in a moment. Once the scene was secure, of course, the investigation was launched. This is a complex investigation. We requested the assistance of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They have provided some assistance in terms of processing the scene for evidence. And again, I'll let Special Agent Charge Patel tell you a little bit more about that. We, at this point, believe that we have identified the subject responsible for this shooting. I am not at a point now where I can provide you with his identity because we are still in the process of interviewing people who he may have been associated with, and we have other procedural matters that we have to deal with before we make his identity known. In addition to that, we're working to essentially reconstruct this individual's activities over the course of today as well as into the past to determine why he has done the things that why he did the things that he did. We have received some information that he made an appointment to come to the school and meet with an administrator. His statement to school officials was that he wanted to explore the possibility of enrolling a family member as a student at the school. He did meet with a school administrator. I'm told that meeting was cordial. There wasn't anything about the meeting that gave rise to concerns by the administrator. And at this point, we're trying to determine the veracity of that statement as to whether or not he actually was there to enroll or talk about enrolling a student, or if that was instead a ruse to get onto the campus. We'll work to try to figure out what that was. After that meeting is when the shooting occurred, and then subsequently it appears as though he took his own life. As I've said in earlier press conferences, we have received some information that leads us to believe that the subject responsible for this shooting targeted this school because of its affiliation with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now, the preliminary information I have right now and what we're currently seeing leads me at this point to believe that this is an isolated incident. That said, out of an abundance of caution, We sent an alert out to law enforcement agencies throughout the state of California, advising them of this shooting and advising them that this subject may have targeted this school because of its affiliation with that particular religious organization. Our request of those law enforcement agencies was to be vigilant and make sure that those schools are safe and the students of the school safe. We've also been in contact with leadership at the Seventh-day Adventist Church, as well as the portion of their organization that oversees the schools. They're aware of that, and they're going to take whatever steps they need to ensure the safety of those students. Again, we're very early on in this investigation. At my last press briefing, I talked about how this individual arrived at the school. He arrived in a vehicle, and since that last briefing, we have identified the individual who dropped him off. It was an Uber driver, and that individual is currently being interviewed by our investigative staff or detective to determine exactly what was said or what transpired in that. But that's all the information I have right now. So at this point, we're no longer looking for that gray four-door sedan. We believe that we have that vehicle and we have the individual who drove that vehicle. All right, at this point, I think what I would like to do is turn it over to our District Attorney, Mike Ramsey, for him to provide you with some information about what his office is doing to assist the victims in this case. And then we'll have Special Agent in Charge Sid Patel come up and talk about what the FBI is doing to assist us with this investigation. So, Mr. Ramsey?
Good evening. I'm Mike Ramsey, Butte County District Attorney, and basically our major emphasis here is to assist the Sheriff's Office with investigators that we have. I want to say one thing. I'm very proud of Butte County law enforcement. They all came together. There was many different agencies that were there to help out with this investigation and continue to help out with the investigation. A major portion that we have is we have a mass casualty unit of victim assistant advocates that are in the Butte County District Attorney's Office, and some also from Sutter County that came to the Nazarene Church to assist the parents there and start the process of into the future helping with their needs as victims of an obvious criminal action. And so that will be going on now for weeks, obviously months. Not only the children that were grievously injured, but those children that saw their classmates gunned down in front of them.
My name is Sid Patel. I'm the Special Agent in Charge for the Sacramento FBI Field Office. First of all, speaking as a parent, my heart goes out to the families and communities affected. No father, no mother should have to endure what happened today. Please know we're working hand in hand with the full force of the FBI to be able to assist the Sheriff's Department in any way or form they need, as well as your communities. As of now, we've had our evidence response team deployed. We have our victim specialists here to help with the family members. We have our agents, our special agents that are on the field working concurrently to assist with investigative efforts. And we're doing an entire workup of the subject to get a better understanding of his motivation, ideology, what else could help understand today's situation and incidents. Again, I want to thank our law enforcement partners and the close relationship we have. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your support and assistance during this very difficult time. And I'll close my comments with the fact that here we are again in Butte County dealing with another major incident, major tragedy. And this community has endured so much over the last few years. It's hard to believe that we're back here again, but I can assure you that we're going to do everything we possibly can to figure out why this individual did the things that he did. And then, of course, moving forward, try to take care of those members of our community who have been impacted by this horrific event. I don't have much more information. I will take questions, but I need you to understand that there are areas of this investigation that I'm just not yet willing to go into because we're still early on. And when I do provide you information, I want to provide the best solid information that I can. I also want to be thoughtful about making sure that we don't do anything that would jeopardize our investigation. And so I'm going to do this in an orderly fashion, okay? And I'm going to start here and move across the room. Sir, do you have any questions?
Was the Uber driver from Oroville?
I don't have that information. And so for the purposes of our Facebook Live audience and for others who may not have heard your question was the Uber driver from Oroville? I don't know that information yet because he is being interviewed as we speak.
I'm curious if there's any additional information about the nature of the injuries of the victims and what their recovery timeline might be.
Yeah, I've got some preliminary information about injuries, but I'm not at this point. I don't yet at this point have a solid grasp on all those injuries. I can tell you that the injuries are very, very serious, and these children are in extremely critical condition. The fact that they are being treated by medical staff currently, I think is great. It's good that they're still in the position to be treated, but folks, we're not out of the woods yet, and there's a long way to go with this. And so, again, that's why I asked everybody to keep them in their prayers. Thank you.
So you mentioned that you contacted other agencies to help protect this population for this school in Seventh-day Adventist Church. Is this considered a hate crime, and is this indicative of a larger issue, or was that what you meant by this is an isolated issue?
That's a great question. So first off, I want to reiterate, very early on in the investigation, once we had some indication that the individual responsible for this may have targeted the school because of its affiliation with Seventh-day Adventists, we called the Chico Police Department, the Oroville Police Department, and the Paradise Police Department, and they immediately dispatched officers to schools within their communities that have the same affiliation so that we were ensured that they were being protected. Now, whether or not this is a hate crime or whether or not it's part of some larger scheme, at this point, I don't have enough information to provide an answer to that. That's one of the things that we are currently working on. And before I provide information about that, I want to be relatively confident. I don't think this is the time to speculate, and so I'm not going to. Good.
Similar question. Have there been any reports of members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church being targeted in the recent past?
I'm not aware of any at this point.
Can you say if the shooter said anything suspicious to the principal?
My understanding is that the meeting between the principal was cordial and didn't raise any concerns or alarms to the principal. So it doesn't appear that he said anything that would have caused her to believe or to think that he was going to do something like he did.
Did the Uber driver turn himself in, or did you guys find him?
I believe we found him, and I don't know exactly the investigative techniques or methods that ultimately did that, but we did locate him, and again, we're talking to him.
Can you disclose the weapon type?
It was a handgun. That's the best I have for you right now. Okay? Good. Yes?
What is the status when it comes to students and faculty returning to the school?
So the school will probably be occupying and controlling the school until sometime tomorrow afternoon in terms of processing the scene. After that, we're going to have some conversations with the school administration to turn that back over to them, and also talk with them about what it looks like to have students return to that campus. Of course, I suspect that there's going to have to be some cleaning and maintenance and things of that nature done. But I have been in contact with the superintendent of schools for the Butte County Office of Education, who has offered to provide crisis response staff to work with the local school administrators to help deal with the reopening and the transition back, and also talked about the prospect of having law enforcement officers present when the school opens up. I think that is a conversation that will happen sometime next week, and I think there's a lot of moving parts, and I want to make sure we're making sure that all of the faculty and students and parents of those kids who return feel comfortable about that. So those are all decisions and conversations that are going to be happening probably later next week. Okay, one more?
And then, yeah, what was the status of the school in terms of security beforehand? Is there a guard on campus or after days, anything like that?
Yeah, my understanding is that this particular school is a small school. There's only about 35 students. But my understanding is that there wasn't a security officer routinely on site. There wasn't one today, and this is not a school where a law enforcement school resource officer was stationed. Beyond that, I don't have a lot of information about what security procedures they had in place. Did you guys have anything?
What are your overall feelings as we're coming towards the end of the evening? I know we spoke with you earlier.
Yeah.
And what are your words to the community as we've seen a lot of disasters in this area?
Yeah. So as I said earlier, I'm still operating on adrenaline, right? Still kind of in that got to get the job done mode. And it's important that I stay in that mode, as well as my staff who are also kind of in that, we've got a job to do, we need to get it done, make sure it's done correctly. I suspect that we probably won't have time to really reflect on this until tomorrow or the next day. But I definitely, as I was driving to the school, thinking to myself, kind of initially, like, I can't believe that Butte County is again having to deal with another tragedy. There's just been so much trauma visited upon our community, and we're a resilient community, but man. But then I had to put that thought on my head and start talking about what we were going to do to get that done. So that's the best answer I have for you on that particular question.
Thank you.
Yeah. You have anything? Okay. Sounds good. Okay, I think I'm coming around. Yep. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Sheriff Zach Wood of Fox 40. Thanks for taking the time.
For sure.
2 questions. What was the situation around the shooting with the kids at recess? Was this in a hallway or a playground or at lunch? And the other question is, do you know if the suspect owned this gun legally?
Okay. So first question is, I believe that the students were outside of the classroom when the shooting occurred. I don't exactly know if they were on recess or on break or a lunch or whatever the case may be. We'll get farther into that when the investigation comes. As to the firearm, we are still delving into the origin of the firearm and how this individual came to be in possession of it. And I'm not at this point able to verify how he did it or whether he obtained it legally. That information will come once we have a chance to check all that out.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right, we're wrapping things up right now. We just heard from the Butte County Sheriff, Corey Honey, as he's been updating us on any of the new information that's come in. I'm going to go through my bullet points here right now. First off, they have talked about the 2 children. We're talking about a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. These are both boys, kindergartners at this school who were both shot. He was trying to update us more on the condition, but only could say that they are in extremely critical condition, asking the community for prayers because they still have a long road ahead of them. He said that the one uplifting thing that could come out of that is that they are still currently being worked on right now by medical staff, but of course they are in extremely critical condition. So keeping our prayers and thoughts with them. Also, They have identified the suspect at this point. However, they are not going to release that identification publicly because they are still locating people and talking with people who are associated with the suspect. They did say that the suspect had started an appointment with the principal and administrator at the school, saying that he was interested in possibly enrolling a family member at that school. Whether or not that is true or just a ruse to get onto campus is what they are still looking into right now. They said nothing suspicious came out of that meeting. The meeting went well. There was nothing odd. So the suspect then went on to campus, and that is when they heard all of the chaos, the shootings, and as you can imagine, just the horror that unfolded afterwards. The other big point that came out of this press conference that we just heard with the Butte County Sheriff is that the driver who had dropped off that suspect has now been located and identified, is at this point being interviewed, but that we do know that this driver was an Uber driver, somebody who had simply been called and then transported the suspect to the campus. They're talking with that person right now, though, but as you heard earlier, at one point, we only knew that it was a four-door gray sedan, that they were looking for a driver who had dropped him off. We are now learning that that driver was simply an Uber driver who had dropped the suspect off at the school unknowingly, not knowing that this horror would have unfolded here. And then they also walked us through the timeline. This was a quick timeline. All of this happened so quickly. They got the calls to 911. Those calls came from cell phones that went straight to CHP because that's how the system is routed. Those calls, the very first one came in at 1:08. CHP dispatched immediately, first on scene, getting there at 1:10. So simply 2 minutes later, and we already had law enforcement on the scene at that school, and then deputies arrived at 1:14. So you can tell 1:08 those calls came in, law enforcement already at that school at 1:10, and then 1:14. So they were there very quickly. At this point, we're learning right now as well as that the sheriff, as he had said earlier, has reached out to other schools across California that are have an affiliation with Seventh-day Adventists, because that right now appears to have been the target from this suspect. Why he would have been targeting that, there is no telling at this point, and the sheriff wanting to be very careful as to what he said about that, only to say that he just wanted to send out that information across California just to make sure that other schools that had any affiliations with Seventh-day Adventists were as well on alert and just knew that this had happened. We are going to stay with this story, of course, continue following any more updates as they come in. You can always keep up with us right here on the stream and get the very latest information on CBS13.com. Your primetime Sacramento only newscast at 8 o'clock is getting ready to start and on KMAX 31, so you can get some more updates then. And then we'll see you on CBS 13 at 10 and 11. Have a good night.